Hey, what's up? Welcome to Game Dev with Greg. I'm Greg, the founder of How to Build Games, and we're talking today about why the idea guy sucks and how they can suck less. Now, I want to clarify a couple of things before we get started. I'm not talking about somebody who has a bunch of ideas and works really hard on them. That's called an entrepreneur or a game developer or a programmer. That's a good thing. Those are awesome. I'm not talking about somebody who has a bunch of ideas and has money and wants to hire you. We call those clients. Also a very good thing. I'm talking about the idea guy or gal that comes in, wants you to build their game or their app. They've got this great idea. It's going to make tons and tons of money. You do all the work. We'll split the profits. That's no good. I also want to talk about how they can bring something to the table to make themselves appeal a little more. So I'm hoping that this video appeals to the people that have dealt with that person. And also, if you are that person, I'm going to talk about how not to be that person, how you can do some things that will tip the scale in your favor when you're talking to programmers and artists and things like that, so you can bring more than, hey, I've got an idea, you should work on it. So today we're going to talk about the idea guy. Now, let me define what this is and what it's not. The idea guy is somebody that's like, hey, I got a great idea. You should jump on this right away. We are going to make piles of money. And that's all they bring to the table. If you're this guy, please stop. Not helping. Now, if you're like, hey, I got a cool idea, it's blah, blah, blah. That's great. But if you're like, hey, I got this cool idea, it's blah, 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 you should build it and we will split the assuredly resulting piles of money. Which is what I just said. Oh, I got a great idea. It's going to make tons of money. You have no idea how often I've heard that. I've heard that over and over and over and over. With apps, because I got involved with the App Store very early, I heard it a lot. Games, I still hear it a lot. I had one person that wanted me to give them 5% of a company and 5% of all the revenue to tell me the title of a book that they read. Not their book, but just for passing on that information, me getting the privilege of finding out the title of the book that I should go read because they thought it would make an awesome game. 10%, which, I guess if you've not been involved with businesses and companies and understand what 10% ownership actually means, it's not as offensive. And I really think this person meant well. They were a little older, even older than me. But they would not tell me what it was. They're like, oh, I think it's great, and it'd be great, and it's got all these cool monsters and things, and I don't think the author is even thinking about video games because I don't think they're technologically, inclined, and it would be just such an awesome game. You should make it, but I want 10% to tell you what the title of the book is that somebody else wrote. Not even this person's intellectual property. Not their IP, but they wanted 10% to tell me the title of this book that I should go read. And then contact the author and say, hey, I'd like to make a game about your book and build this game that, would take, from what they described, tremendous amounts of time, effort, and money and energy. By the way, this person is going to get 10%, not because they wrote the book, not because they own the intellectual property, but because they read it and thought, hey, this would make a great game. I should tell somebody who makes games about this and get 10% for doing it. Finder's fee. I mean, that works in some businesses. Like, if I'm like a real estate agent, maybe, and you like bring somebody who wants to buy a house and, maybe, and there's a commission and you get like a piece of that finder's fee, that's a legit thing in businesses, but not for telling me about some book that somebody else wrote that you don't even have any control over. She didn't. They did not know the author, have any contact, just thought, hey, that's a great idea. Please don't be that person. What I'm not complaining about is somebody who's got a good idea and wants to work on it. If you're just bringing an idea to a programmer or to an artist or whatever, and this goes across a lot of mediums. It can be, in this case, I'm a programmer, so people come to me with app and game ideas, but writers get this a lot apparently. Hey, got a great idea for a book. I'm sure movie directors and people that produce films get this tons and tons. Somebody brings them an idea, thinks it's the best idea in the world, wants them to sign away all kinds of crazy stuff before they will even tell you the idea, and or promise them 10% of the company. Don't do that. But if you're coming with an idea and you say, hey, I got a great idea for a game, look at all this artwork I've made. You're bringing something to the table. Or you say, hey, I got a great idea for a game. I prototyped it over here in Tabletop Simulator. Or I've got a great idea for a game. Here's my 18 pages of notes. That tells me that you've actually put some thought into it. You've put some effort into it. You've got some skin in the game. If all you're bringing is an idea, and you're like, hey, I got a great idea about blah, 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 and that's as much effort as you put into it, you're drinking beer with your buddies, and you thought, hey, this make a fun game. I'm going to go tell somebody about it, and I should get 10% of the company. It doesn't work like that. To build anything is difficult. To build something really well is very difficult. It's fun and easy to start things. It's really hard to finish them. That'll be the topic of another video. But it takes a lot of effort to put something together. And here's the thing. I'm not short on ideas. I've got plenty of them. I've been working on ideas since I've been working on iPhone apps. I got involved with the App Store around the time it was opening. I was working with a company that was doing 3D animation, and we had a company come to us and say, hey, we need some graphics for this new game we're trying to release for this new thing called the iPhone App Store. And it took about 5 seconds for me to understand what that was and what that was about and go, this is going to be a big thing. This is a focus. Yeah. Quit my day job shortly after that. Started making apps. I've had some successes and some failures. That's part of it. But you've gotta to do something, to build something, especially to build something well. It takes a lot of effort. I've got a backlog of ideas, literally 10 years worth, just there. And I was making games before the App Store. Last decade I've been using Unity. Before that I was using Flash and then Macromedia Director. Before that I was using other stuff, all the way back to BASIC and the Apple II days. So I have no shortage of ideas. So if I'm sitting around and I'm like, what should I build today? Probably not going to be your idea. Unless you're bringing something to the table. That's how the idea guys can suck less. Bring something to the table. If it's money, that's great. Bring some money. Be like, hey, I got a great idea. I think it'd make a great game. I've got a couple grand that I can put into it. Then we can talk. But if you're just bringing an idea and again, if you're bringing an idea like, hey, I got a great idea for blah, blah, blah. Cool. That sounds like a neat idea. But ideas are often overvalued by the person who had them. I'll go into some specifics on another video. But just because you have an idea doesn't mean that it's going to be the best thing ever. Doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to make. And I've had so many people, oh, I got a great idea for an app. It'll be really easy to make. And early on in my App Store days, I would do it. It never ended well. It really didn't. I've got a great idea for a super simple app going to make tons of money. Because the problem with that is even if I do my part really well, if the other person is the one promoting it and they don't do their job really well, guess what? Guess how many sales you get? Yeah, that's right. Goose egg. None. So just having an idea is not enough. Bring something else to the table. Bring some money. Bring some art. Bring some programming knowledge. If you've spent enough time learning programming, learning game development to say, here's what I've got, but I got kind of stuck here, but basically I want to see that you've put some time into it beyond, hey, I got a great idea. Even beyond that, if you've got an idea and you describe it to me, I'm going to see it differently, and I'm probably going to execute it differently if that's where the conversation ends. There's a funny movie by the Coen brothers, the same guys that made Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and a number of other movies. Very specific sense of humor, but if you like that brand of humor. They had a movie called The Hudsucker Proxy. And one of the guys I worked with told me about it, and I was like, that's such a weird name. I don't want to watch the movie, I don't even like that name. So this movie, The Hudsucker Proxy. During the whole movie, this guy started out, and it's been a while since I've seen it, so if you've seen it like 83 times and I'm getting a piece wrong, I apologize. But basically, this guy started working at a toy company, and he kept saying, I've got this great idea, it's going to change the world, it's going to change the world. And they'd say, well, what is it? And he'd go and he'd get the piece of chalk, and he'd go up on the chalkboard, and he'd draw this circle. And they're all like, what? And he'd go, for kids. And they'd be like, kid, get out. And this guy, he was like the janitor, and he worked in the mailroom, and he kept everybody who would listen. He's like, I got this great idea. And he'd draw this circle, and he'd go, for kids. And they'd be like, what? What's wrong with you? Get out of here. Spoiler alert, I'm about to spoil the Hudsucker Proxy movie. It's almost as old as I am. Okay, not quite. It's been out a long time. I heard the story in the 90s, so if you haven't seen it by now, it's worth watching, if you like the Coen brothers. But I'm going to go and spoil it for the sake of this. Eventually, and I forget how the movie goes, I need to go back and watch it. And I'll put a link in the comments if it's available on Amazon or something. Eventually, he works his way up the company or something. He ends up at the top of the company. He's like, I got the thing we're going to do. And so again, he does the circle and he goes, for kids. And then, and you're watching the movie and you don't know what it is. And you're like, is it a ball? Is it a wheel? Does he not think that that a ball has been invented? And the whole movie is set like in the 50s or the 60s, something like that. At the end of the movie, he finally does it, for kids. And it cuts to a scene and shows all these kids in this field with hula hoops on. And they're all doing the hula hoop. Now, hula hoop was before my time. If you're watching this, probably before your time. But it was a huge, huge craze in the 60s. Maybe the 70s too. I don't know. It was a huge craze for a while. So the point of that story is that he kept telling everybody, I got this great idea, but he couldn't communicate it well. Nobody understood it. But when he finally got around to implementing it, everybody loved it. But everybody who saw that thought something different. So if you say, I've got this great idea, and or I'll take one of my games. I've got this great idea for this game, and the blocks roll around, and like when you hit the right block, then it changes colors. It's really cool. It's really fun. I've been working on that for a number of years, and it's one of my games called Rolling Blocks, coming out soon, hopefully out by the time you see this. Or I could say, I got this great idea for this game about running over clowns, or you can hit them with the big spinning hammer on the top of the car. That's another game that I made. Or I say, oh, I got this idea, this app. It's this prank app, and it's called Santa Hates You But Loves Me, and it's a joke app. And so if you do the secret thing, then every time you say, give me a present, Santa gives you a great present. You get a new cell phone, a bag of money, plate of cookies, a kitten. But then you give it to your buddy and say, here, you try. And they try, and every time they hit the give me a present button because they don't know the secret, they get, here's old socks, here's a frog leg, here's a dead fish, here's poop. That's right, Santa gives you poop. This is a game. Well, sort of game. It's a prank app that I made. But if you went and made that, you would make a very different version of it than I did. I had an artist that I met at a game jam work on it with me. Did an amazing job. Did this awesome kind of Ren and Stimpy looking Santa Claus, John Kay style. And really cool. I had another artist years later. And he did the same thing, did all the graphics, but it's a much more traditional Santa because that's what I asked for. But everybody's vision of an idea is going to be really different. So I'm not that worried about you taking my idea and running with it. You shouldn't be that worried about me taking your idea and running with it. The thing is, if a game is published on the App Store or a website or a video of it, somebody who's good enough can go take that game and tear it apart and make something pretty close. As, Flappy Bird is an extreme example because any decent programmer can throw together a Flappy Bird game in a few hours. And so that, there were tons and tons and tons of Flappy Bird games almost overnight once that got popular, once it got out that he was making $50,000 a day. And it's pretty interesting if you go dig into that story, and most people seem to think that he gamed the system in a number of ways to get as big as he did, as quickly as he did, but he was getting too much attention, unwanted attention from the authorities in his country and stuff like that. That happens, I guess. But Flappy Bird, people looked at that and go, oh, I can make that. So if all you've got is a really simple idea that anybody can put together in an afternoon, make that game. But know that other people are going to make it too. It's okay. If other people make a Santa Hates You But Loves Me game that's similar to mine, that's okay. It won't be like mine. It'll be different. And it'll have different features and different functionalities. Rolling blocks, same thing. Sparky the Road Clown, which is the game I made where you run over the clown or you hit him with a big spinning hammer on top. Your idea of a game about running over clowns will be different than my idea about a game about running over clowns. And to go back to the original thought, I've got a big, huge, I've actually got several huge lists, documents, notebooks of game ideas that I've yet to do. Some of which I think are really good. Sometimes people will come to me and be like, hey, I got this great idea for a game. It's blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that is a neat idea. And you have no idea how much time and money and effort it would take to make that game or that app happen. I do. And so when I'm looking through my list, I'm going to qualify some of these things and go, that's a game that I could actually build and work on and finish. Whereas this, that's too much for right now. As you get more experience, and if you're an artist and programmers are coming to you, it's the same thing. Being the programmer is just one piece of the equation. You need several of them. So, if you're bringing an idea, bring something else too. Bring another skill. Or bring some money. That works too. Hey, I got a great idea for a game. I want to pay you to make it. That works all day long. If you're just starting out, you want to join onto a team with some people making a game and everybody's going to get paid. If it makes a lot of money, feel free. chances are pretty good it's not going to end with everybody making a bunch of money. That's kind of its own show, I think, as to why. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be a good experience. But at my point, where I've been programming professionally for a while, I've been making apps and games, I've published a lot of apps and games for myself, for other people, personal projects, professional projects. I'm not going to take somebody else's game idea and build it for them for free or app, because they usually say, oh, well, I'm bringing the marketing side of things. The problem there is that if they're not good at that, and you're usually not going to find that out until after it's done, again, you don't get paid. So I am a little cynical, but I've also been doing this for a long time and talked to a lot of people that have been in this situation, and the story doesn't really change that much. I'd love to be proved wrong. If you've gotten involved with a project and it made a bunch of money, and several people worked together and eventually it made a bunch of money, man, please tell me about it. Tell me about it in the comments. Tell me what your experience is in the comments with idea guys and gals. If you're an idea guy, what would you like to hear about from a programmer? Because there's got to be bits and pieces that, and maybe that's how can I make myself better. I've kind of hit on that a little bit. Specifically, if you can learn how to do some aspect, even if it's the programming, if it's enough to know at least what you're asking for, that's going to go further. I talked to a guy that he'd built what he could in Tabletop Simulator. I, spent more time with him, had more grace for him, spent more time with his questions, trying to help him understand how to get his game finished, because I want to see him get his game finished. I want to see all of you get your game finished, whether you're a programmer or artist or whatever. Or the idea guy. I don't hate idea guys. I've had really good friends who are idea guys. I started a business with an idea guy who was not a programmer, but he'd worked enough with them that he usually had an idea of what he was asking for and the difficulty of it. He also brought money to the table. He also brought the sales and marketing side with a proven track record to the table. We started an app company. 20 months later, we sold that app company. I don't hate idea guys unless they're coming and they're bringing nothing but the idea and they want the world for it, or 10% of the company. So I'm going to bring a couple of conversations that I've had with idea guys, the one with the book, and there's another one as well that I'll bring that will help you on a future show, that will help you kind of see some of the red flags to look out for. Because there have been a lot of times where I've responded to something and it has not been what it appeared to be. So we're gonna see how that works, how to fix it. So this is What's Greg Working On, where I talk a little bit about something I'm working on, either a personal project or a professional project, those that I can show. And just to kind of let you see some of the different things that I work on, and some of them will be available to the public at some point, or may already, and some of them will not, but some of them may never make it off of my computer. But I work on a lot of different things for myself and for other people. I think you'll find them interesting. So what's Greg working on? This is Rolling Blocks. This is a game that I mentioned earlier that is blocks that roll along, and then they take on a certain color when they get to a certain spot. So this is the title screen. It's basically playing the game by itself over here. It's making a ghost from a certain game that you might recognize. If you're watching this channel, you probably do. I did some stuff with recursion to make this where it always finishes the puzzle the second or third time through. They kind of start out randomly, but then when they come back through, it sets them up in the rows that still need some. So that's the title screen. I'm going to play the game. Hit play. This is going to be iPhone, iPad, Android, and Steam. Oh, looks like I am still in the middle of one of my working on it phases. So I'm going to take this and say, no, don't skip to the end. Looks like we've got superheroes. I'm going to hit play again. So on mobile, you can use the controls here. Since I'm not on mobile, I'm just going to use the arrow keys to move back and forth. You can zoom out, that'll be a pinch and zoom, or you can just, again, use the arrow keys. Basically, you're rolling these blocks, hence the name. You're moving things around. This little block army kind of moves all in the same direction at the same time, and they will go into the open slots, and they will take the color of that slot and turn into an icon eventually. Right now it's an 8x8 kind of icon. Later on we will have some other the performance is still pretty bad with 16x16 and stuff like that. 8x8 is 64 blocks. 16x16 is a whole lot more when Unity's trying to keep up with stuff, and you've got scripts on every single block and things like that. I've got this feature here, show holes, that will show if there are pieces still missing. It'll show that. Now watch this. This is cool. I like this. So it's done. We get the picture of it. These buttons need to be moved clearly. So I'm going to turn them off. There we go. So this is what I call the block playground. So if I right click, the block gets small. If I left click, it gets bigger or smaller. And so all these continue to get bigger or smaller. Turn this back on actually. So I'm working on getting the UI. The gameplay is in pretty good shape. The UI still needs a little bit of work. I can hit this rebuild button and it rebuilds that thing, whatever it is. In this case, looks like an Iron Man icon. I'm gonna rebuild it again. Shrink to swipe is one of my favorites. And everything I hit just shrinks down. Turn that back off, and I will, have a show a toggle. Like I said, still working on the UI. Or you can just hit that a bunch, and everything goes and blows away. And there's a new one, and I've still got skip to the end. So there he was, and there he goes. So, like I said, this is Rolling Blocks. This is a game that I'm working on. I've worked on this game off and on for a number of years. I'm going to get it out this year. Probably a few months. I'm trying to get my YouTube channel revived. After that, I will be focused on finishing this up, getting it finished and ready for Steam and mobile. So thanks for watching. What's Greg working on?
So welcome to What is Greg Playing? This is just something where I show a little bit. It might be something that's very popular right now. It might be something that you've never heard of. Hopefully I'll strike a balance between the two. I play a lot of different things. I don't have as much time to play games as I'd like, but I don't know who does. So hopefully you'll find some interesting things in here.
So, welcome to this edition of What is Greg Playing? This is a game called Noida. It's an interesting little game I picked up during the Steam Christmas sale, or the winter sale, as they call it. Basically, you're moving around, WASD, use your mouse to shoot. You end up with a couple of different wands. This one shoots bombs that blows up. But everything in here affects everything. So that blowing up made smoke. If I shoot one of these lanterns, it's going to fall. It's probably going to catch things on fire. There we go. So all the pixels are happening as I move my mouse over and say, oh yeah, there's smoke building up. There's rock. This shows that I am wet. So this is oil, that is oil, this is explosive. And now I'm on fire. Thankfully, I've got this thing. I can pour on myself. Not quite what I meant to do, but okay. It worked. It's a neat little game. So basically, you're going around, you're trying to kill different critters. Killing you. That's gunpowder. I don't want to be standing on it. But it's neat. I could go underneath and break this by shooting it enough. All the pixels are affected by everything else. Slime things. Fire. I'm on fire again. I'm out of water. Clearly, I'm not very good at the game. I do enjoy it. It's neat. Picked up some gold. I'll find more. People that actually know how to play this game are like, man, this guy really sucks. And they are right. I'm much better with first-person shooters. This is probably easier with a controller. Not really my kind of game, but I enjoyed it. It's interesting. That means there's one up there. I'm gonna die in a minute. I'm on fire. Oh, let me go in this liquid. Oh, it's all fire. That's... I'm dead. So, you know, I'm not very good at it. I do enjoy it, though. It's interesting. All the pixel physics, different things interact with different things. It makes it an interesting game. So, anyway, Noida, it's on Steam. I think it was $10 or something like that. It's pretty cool. Okay, stats, we're dead. Like I said, not very good at it, but I do enjoy it. I plan on making a lot more of these videos and bringing my decades of experience to people that don't have that experience. If you can learn from somebody who's been there and done that and don't have to go through the painful experiences yourself, you get accelerated when you do that. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give us a like and consider a subscribe. Not because they own the intellectual prop. Not because they wrote the book. Not because they own the